I'm Janet Connor, prayer artist, mystic witch, and a few other things, and this is the precious, incomparable Hilda Moore of Weird. And she and I are going to read you the Notes from the Field newsletter from last Sunday, week 17 in 2022, this extraordinary year in which we are learning to listen to love. When I first received that and wrote it as the whole year umbrella, I thought, well, that sounds simple. We're going to listen to love. Who doesn't want to listen to love? Well, 17 years in, it's turning out to be way more profound. And I don't want to use the word difficult. What's the right word? Difficult. Than we ever thought. So in week 17, we are beginning to realize that prayer, real prayer, is alive. Friends, soul writers, mystics, witches, lovers of prayer, I am a prayer artist. Prayer is the heart of my life, the drumbeat of my heart. I never get tired of praying or learning about prayer or experimenting with prayer. I've learned an awful lot about prayer from you, haven't I? But, and this is a big but, it all depends on how you define prayer, doesn't it? Prayer, according to the dictionary, sounds pretty dreary. There are basically 3 bullets, no matter what dictionary you look at. Bullet number 1, supplication. Bullet number 2, to an external male god. Mind you, in the dictionary it does not say external, nor does it say male, because those are simply taken for granted. And the 3rd bullet is following a formula or a ritual. Does that sound like fun? Does that sound miraculous? Does that definition make you want to start dancing around the kitchen? No, it does not. In fact, when I sat right here 4 years ago and opened my OED, which is hiding behind me on the bottom shelf, oh, I burst into tears. I burst into tears. How can I possibly call myself a prayer artist? How can I possibly invite you to come to prayer intensives if that is what prayer is all about? So let's just clip those away. Supplication? Supplication? Please, do you really think the only purpose of prayer is supplication? Even God must be very sick of all of us supplicating, all of us begging for 5,000 years. External male God. Have you read God is a Black Woman? Put it on your list. Christina Cleveland, in this outrageous book, God is a Black Woman, just tosses white male God out the window. This is her name for this cranky old patriarchal God. You know, that guy in the white robe with the long white hair and all his rules, and he's just waiting to catch you committing a sin. That guy. She calls him white male God. One word. White male God. White male God. Well, I didn't know that name, but I tossed white male God out the window on December 26, 2014, when an internal, sacred, feminine goddess under the name Sophia landed in my body and totally took over my soul writing and my entire life. This sacred, internal, feminine goddess is just kissing absolutely everyone and everything all the time. 3rd bullet, formula. Now, let's just think about this for a second. Who wrote the formulas? Right? White, male, religious leaders. Can you think of a traditional prayer in the traditional canon of any one of our traditional patriarchal religions that was written by a woman? I'll wait. I'm still waiting. So clearly, if I'm going to call myself a prayer artist, I had to redefine prayer, and I did. I played with ideas in deep soul writing and listening and staring out the window for almost a year, maybe even a little longer. In previous Notes from the Field letters, I have talked about each of my 6 definitions, and their purpose, their intent is to resacralize prayer, re-energize prayer, get everybody in love and excited about prayer. These are definitions that set the heart singing, why they might even induce you to do some dancing around the kitchen. Now, they are all a tad mysterious. There's nothing mysterious about supplication of an external male god following a formula. That is not mysterious. That's linear, follow the dots. My 6 definitions are mysterious, and they don't fit inside that tight little patriarchal rule box. But there's one in particular of the 6 that really gets people going, what? What? Could you say that again? And the third of the 6 definitions is prayer is a relationship. Prayer is a living, breathing relationship because prayer is alive. So, you are in a relationship with prayer itself, or I think I'd rather say herself. And when you pray, you are praying with everyone who has ever prayed. Everyone who has ever prayed. It does boggle the mind, doesn't it? But, wait, I lost my place. It does boggle the mind, but then all 6 definitions do. And they should. They should. If they don't, then it's just prayer in that, we could almost call it paint by number, patriarchal, connect the dots. And of course, if you're painting by the number, don't you dare color outside the lines, right? Oh, we've been coloring way outside the lines for quite a while now. So once I began to experience that prayer is alive, that it is this beautiful, intimate, loving, sexy relationship, I just found myself falling madly in love with prayer, all kinds of prayer. But there's one prayer I have loved without measure, and that is Ho'oponopono, the ancient prayer of forgiveness that comes to us from the pre-literate Hawaiian oral tradition. I received this prayer as a gift from Kumu Karen Lealoha Carroll through Emma Kupu Mitchell in 2013 when my son became a political prisoner. That prayer, I am certain, saved his life. It also completely blew the doors off any understanding I thought I had of what forgiveness is and what it can do. And it led me straight to Kahulahela. So I just want to show you a beautiful little picture. I'm going to have to move the camera to do this, of Kahulahela while I talk about her. Don't you want to look at Kahulahela? Kahulahela has a relationship to prayer like no one I have ever met. For Lahela, prayer is alive. For everyone in the ancient oral tradition in Hawaii, prayer is alive. You can see prayer talking to her through her guides and ancestors who have prayed Ho'oponopono and hundreds of other oral tradition Hawaiian prayers for millennia. When Prayer Artist arrived for me in 2018, I knew I had to stop teaching my courses and start offering prayer intensives. So the very first mystic I asked to join me was, of course, Kahulahela. The first prayer intensive in 2018 on Ho'oponopono grew into 6 Ho'oponopono intensives in 3 years. When the return of the witch's pilgrimage was birthing itself through me last summer, I asked Lahela to please help us cut the negative patriarchal cords of abuse and hate. She said yes and came for 13 Saturdays in a row, dressed in ceremonial robes, like you can see her wearing in that picture, singing Oli, and blessing us as she sprinkled sacred water with fresh green tea leaves. There's a nice picture of this sacred water, and there's a tea leaf that she uses as she is singing Oli to bless us. When Lahela prayed to release not just the witches from their perpetrators, but the perpetrators themselves, I could see tears on her cheeks. She said later those were tears of joy from the perpetrators who were stunned that we would gather in sacred prayer to cut them loose, to cut them free from the patriarchal beliefs and expectations that trapped them then and continue to this day to trap people. When the pilgrimage ended, Lahela was called into a very deep conversation with her elders and ancestors. They thanked her for all she has done to share the beauty and truth of Ho'oponopono with us. But, they said, the time has come for a new version, a version that mirrors the needs of the people in this current moment, a prayer that anyone can learn and embrace and adjust to what is happening in their lives. In short, a prayer that's alive, right? And they said they would work with her to create it, and they did. And last October, 80 of you joined me, and we were so blessed to learn this new version with a new name, Hana-i-ka-pono. It has elements of Ho'oponopono, words you might recognize from the original oral tradition prayer, but it's very flexible, and it includes multidisciplinary release of blockages, kind of like Lomi Lomi, coupled with an infusion of sacred feminine grace, a meditation, welcoming the first rays of the sun, of course, the chant of sacred Oli and the blessing bowl, and it ends protecting you with a waterfall of light. It is a truly complete living prayer. So, as 2022 dawned, a year that is revealing some very strange energies and intense complications, and nobody really knows where we're going or what's going to happen, and there are wild celestial events. There is a lot going on. Lahela's guides asked her to give us a new version of Hana-i-ka-pono, specifically tailored to this moment, May of 2022, and then teach us how to adjust it to our lives, our families, our loved ones, our situations, and our world. They said Hana-i-ka-pono is the critical, their word, the critical prayer for 2022. Now, I know from years now of prayer intensives with Kahu Lahela that when we follow the guidance that her guides have given her, we experience release. We experience depths of release and healing and forgiveness that always come as a surprise, a sacred, holy, and very beautiful surprise. Hana-i-ka-pono, the critical prayer for 2022, opens on Tuesday, May 17th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. That gets all the way back to, I think, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Hawaii. Wednesday morning and afternoon in the Pacific Rim. But it's not a good time for our friends in Europe. And so there will be, thank you, Angela in Shropshire, a UK watch party on Thursdays, and both Lahela and I will be there. All the details are on the link below. Lahela's guides asked her, I'm going to show you this picture. They asked her that this be the image. Isn't this interesting? That this is, they said, the perfect image for Hānaiʻikapono, the critical prayer for 2022. This is a photograph of sunlight on the ocean in Oahu, taken by Lahela, who was a professional photographer for 30 years. Neither she or I would have said, oh, that's the picture for Hānaiʻikapono. But when they said to use it, and I began to really sit with it, look at it, pray with it, open my body to this light. Look at that picture. This picture so clearly shows that sunlight is alive, the water is alive, color is alive. There is nothing but movement in this picture. And so I'm thinking, they're so right. This picture really does hold the truth that prayer is alive. Prayer is a living relationship. And when you pray, Hānaiʻikapono, you will be in this river, in this ocean, along with everyone who has ever prayed. I think this is the first time we have received instructions on the image, and I'm thinking, I want to do this all the time now. I think we always want to ask Sophia, the goddess, what is the perfect image for this prayer intensive? Now, I had one other little thing I wanted to add. When I wrote this newsletter, it was Saturday, the 23rd. And I wrote the date for this newsletter, which was Sunday the 24th. And I stared at it. And I stared at it. And I felt, wait a second. There's something important about this date. And then I realized, oh my goddess. April 23rd. April 23rd was the 25th anniversary of the very first day I picked up a pen and stumbled, just simply stumbled into the first living prayer experience of my life, deep soul writing. And I didn't say this in the newsletter, but I would like to tell you that I, in 1997, was going through this violent divorce. I was a complete wreck. And I had an astrology reading with a woman who's no longer on the planet. And in those days, you actually had to draw the natal chart off numbers. It was very complicated. Today, you can just Google, go to astro.com, and bingo, there's your natal chart. And she said something strange. Other astrologers have said, wow. She said, April 23rd, 1997 will be the most important day of your life. She probably said this 2 to 3 weeks before that date. Well, April 23rd came and went. Nothing happened. I didn't win the lottery. I thought, yeah, well, what do astrologers know? It was 20 years later. I was getting ready to celebrate 20 years of deep soul writing with some friends, and I did remember that it began in April. And I suddenly wondered about that astrology reading. And I kept my notes from it. I opened the notes. I noticed April 23rd circled. And I got up, opened that door. Behind that door are now 25 years of journals. And I opened the one marked number 1. And you know what I'm going to say. The date on page 1 of my very first journal in 25 years of deep soul writing was April 23rd, 1997. And to me, that is some kind of miraculous, wild, ecstatic, glorious proof that prayer is alive. Click below for all the information about Ho'oponopono, the critical prayer for 20, I have to move in order to turn this, 2022. I'll see you on May 7th. We will see you. She'll be here, I promise.